I built 3 different floating structure design models and tested them in the Mississippi River. From left to right, I'll call these traditional, spar, and sphere, with a stiff deep-sea anchor, or sphere for short. Some clips were recorded at 120 frames per second to show the effects of the waves on the models, and others are normal 30 frames per second. First, I tested a spar, which I had weighed down by filling one end with steel pellets. Then I added the structure to the top of the spar, and it worked well as designed. Note that the structure itself is high above the water, so the waves don't touch it. The spar is rocking slightly because I had just moved it. Sorry for the less helpful top-down view, the water was lower than I had planned. The traditional model behaved as expected, but the water was unusually calm and lacked any waves. The traditional model and spar models are roughly 1/500th scale, but the sphere model is roughly 1/1000th scale because I wasn't able to find or build a sphere of the desired correct size for a 1/500th scale model. For the sphere model, both the deep sea anchor and the spheres are meant to be flooded. First, I sink the stiff deep sea anchor and then the sphere itself. Note that I had to switch locations because it turned out that the water wasn't deep enough at the first location. The idea behind the sphere model is that the stiff deep sea anchor grabs hold of the calmer deep sea waters while the spherical shape at the water surface minimizes the effects waves would have on the surface portion, resulting in the whole structure being more steady, assuming that the deep waters are calm. The deep sea anchor holds onto a large amount of heavy water without adding the weight of that water itself to the structure, so extra buoyancy isn't needed, except to hold up the actual material the deep sea anchor is made out of, in this case, wood, plastic, nuts, and bolts. It's a careful balance of buoyancy and ballast, one that I was worried that I would get wrong and lose my sphere model. I suspect a strong undertow might be a problem and would need to be studied. The sphere model itself is not meant to be a flotation device, but instead merely as a storm breaker separating the internal calmer waters from the external rough wave waters. The white piece of foam in the middle is enough to hold up the entire structure. The sphere model behaves so well that I'm worried it was touching some kind of plant life or something that was holding it steady. I pushed on the model to verify that it can move, and the model itself drifted around with the current. With the deep sea anchor doing its job, it was much more difficult moving the sphere model around than the traditional and spar models. I'm planning on doing another test from deeper, rougher waters with better waves, while avoiding places with rip currents or undertows, which would complicate the test. Here are the spar and sphere models in real time side by side. Next, I added the traditional model so you can see how all 3 compare to each other. Remember that the sphere model on the far right is at half the scale of the other 2. One last shot of all 3 models. See description below for details.